2 years into my time at Xavier University, and I was no longer the worst, but I was definitely not the best. And I was okay with that. I knew I still had a lot to learn. I didn't have to be the best. I was just really grateful to not stand out as, as being horrible all the time. And I was definitely giving it my all, that's for sure. Like, no one was working as hard as I was. It consumed my every waking moment. I would vocalize as any spare time I had would be spent in the practice rooms. If I was at home, I'd be practicing, I'd be singing on the floor, I'd be doing whatever me and Dr. Brooks had worked on for that day or for that week or whatever. It was just a constant thing. And I had definitely subscribed to the elitist classical voice culture that's present in most American universities. There's this, in fact, this vocal coach, I know he even wrote an article called The Recovering Female Opera Singer. Google that if you get a chance, or I might find the link and place it underneath. There's this culture in American universities where you're kind of taught that classical singing is inherently superior and classical technique is inherently superior. So if you can sing classical technique, you can sing anything. And pop singers and stuff, like you often hear reference to like a Britney Spears or something. They'll say, oh, pop, yeah, people like Britney Spears, but classical singing, that's real singing. And this had definitely started to permeate my psyche to the point where, like, let me give you an example of how dedicated I was to this and how brainwashed I had become. Every Sunday, I sang a solo at this point in my life. So my dad was the pastor of the church. I didn't sing solos every Sunday because my dad was the pastor, and I didn't sing solos because I was so good. I sang solos every Sunday because our church choir was so small. So at any given moment, we had like anywhere from 2 to 4 tenors, and it was just guys, because they could be a true bass, baritone, tenor, it didn't really matter. It could be an alto, but if you were a guy, you were going to be in the tenor section. And I would sing solos every week. And at this point, to give myself a little credit, I was okay. I had a few years of training under my belt, like I trained with my first teacher, with Mr. David, and then I worked with Mr. Brooks for a while. So it's not like I was a complete novice. I was kind of right at that cusp of leaving amateur-ishness and like on a good day, some professional quality could probably peek through, although I would say it likely wasn't very consistent. But with that being said, it finally hit me one day that if I wanted to take my singing to the next level, I had to embrace my classical training. And again, I just want to emphasize, I was constantly being told how this form of training was superior. Classical training is superior. Classical singing is superior. And I had the experience of singing through orchestras. I had performed a lead role in Johnny Schicchi by Puccini, and it had built my confidence a bit. And so I was like, I'm a classically trained singer now, and I'm constantly being boosted up in this way. So I'm like, let me try this. So one Sunday, I did Order My Steps. Now, normally, order my steps in your word, dear Lord. Very light. Lead me, guide me every day. Very heady. Send your anointing, Father, I pray. Order my steps. Very simple. I wasn't really allowed to do a bunch of riffs and runs. And if I did sing out, it's very clean, very to the point kind of singing, and which is okay. But I kind of felt like, that's so weak, Eric, and it's not like you're a classically trained singer now. So one Sunday, I get up, and this is a solo I would do all the time, and I was like, order my steps in your word, dear Lord. I was so serious too, lead me, guide me just crazy. Like not just classical technique, but like bad classical technique. It wasn't even solid. So I really overdid it with the clenching of my abs. I really overdid it with the technique that's known as covering, which, like many classical techniques, is ambiguous, and depending on who you talk to, you might get a different definition. But the way I was taught it was to try to place my tone in the back of my throat within this cavernous space. So instead of ah. Instead of this, it was oh, trying to place the tone within the back of your throat. So I ended up getting like a Kermit the Frog kind of like muffled sound. Let's make muffled a word. And it was just really bad. But I thought it was great. I thought that I was really showing off my new classical chops. I was very proud and oblivious to the truth. And when the service was over and I stepped down, my Aunt Patrice, hey Aunt Patrice, who's normally super supportive and really encouraged me with my singing, very sincerely, she was like, Eric, are you okay? Are you sick? Are you sick, baby? New Orleans, everything's baby. You sick, baby? And I was like, no, I'm fine. She's like, oh, you sound like a little congested. My younger brother Marcus, however, he was like, dude, you sound crazy. you sound crazy. Like, what is wrong with you? And that was like, it really snapped me back to reality. That's really kind of all it took. And I realized like, oh crap, I can't use this technique to do popular music styles. This is not gonna work. I can't be like, order more steps. I felt like that was just too crazy. But at the same time, I still felt like, order my steps in your word, dear Lord. That felt too weak for me. So I was like, I don't want this extreme, but I don't want that extreme. How do I get some meat on my voice without sounding like a confused opera singer? My first course of action was to seek help from some of my older peers who sang just way better than I did. So I remember approaching a few of my friends, including some of the people I mentioned in the previous video about this, some of the people I heard on my first day. And I asked them, like, because I had friends, I don't think I said this, but I had friends who were already being signed to record labels, already getting the attention of people like Randy, like American Idol Randy, like outside of American Idol, like getting the attention of big producers and stuff like that, and just doing all kind of non-opera things on like a big level. So I remember I approached some of them and I was like, how do you use this technique to make these R&B, gospel, pop sounds? And I was surprised that a lot of people were like, you don't. And I was like, okay, well, I kind of know that, but like, I mean, what do you mean? Like, do you tweak it? And they were like, no, you just can't use the technique at all. And I was like, okay, like, then what's the whole point of training? Like, what's the whole point of this classical training if you can't use it? Now, a few other people were like, you can use the technique, Eric. Like, you can use the breathing stuff and the support stuff. But then other people were like, nah, no, you can't. And I remember one senior who was getting ready to enter the opera world professionally. He was like, Eric, you have to pick one. He's like, the more I developed my classical voice, my R&B and gospel voice disappeared. He was like, so everything you start to make the tones with like a lifted soft palate, and you modify your vowels, and everything is fully supported in a very non-speech like way. So I was really kind of, this kind of upset me because I'm like, I really was dedicating myself to this technique, and now you're telling me that I can't use it. So I went to my personal voice teacher. I went to Mr. Brooks, and I told him, I was like, hey, or I asked him, can you give me some help? And this is still the Eric who believed that all adults knew things, like knew everything. And I had really had like full trust in my teachers still. And I was like, I just need your guidance in how to adjust this technique for R&B and gospel singing, because I like the power I'm getting, but I need it to sound more natural. And to make a very long story short, in the course of this conversation, or in the culmination of it, he was like, Eric, yours is a classical instrument. R&B and gospel singing is beneath you, at least in the nasal, tight way these other guys do it. It's just beneath you. You did nothing wrong by singing with the classical tone. That's just what you're supposed to do. I'm like, what? Like, I didn't. So what he's basically telling me is that send your anointing. That's how he wanted me to sing all the time. Well, I guess he would want me to do it better than that. But the point is, he was saying that I remember he asked me to sing a little bit, of like Luther Vandross or something. He was like, give me an example of what you want to do. And I was like, I can't fool myself. I don't want nobody else to ever love me. Da 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 da. And he was like, that's okay if you like all that head voice. And I was like, even I at this time was like, it was much headier and lighter than I wanted it to be. I was like, just help me to meet it up. He wanted me to do like, I can't fool myself. He wanted me to do this crazy kernurdled thing. To put it concisely, my crisis was this. I had been told explicitly, if you can sing classically, if you can sing opera specifically, if you can sing opera, you can sing anything. But nothing else is worth singing, so don't bother and never attempt to sing the kind of music you love to sing ever again. That's basically what I was given. So I was like, learn classical training, because you can sing anything with it, but everything else that's not classical is not worth singing. That is crazy, but that's what a lot of classical students are taught. That's what a lot of voice students are taught in university. So I went to the internet, and I don't remember what exactly I typed in the search, but I know that somehow I came across articles about this breathing coach who allegedly had this really awesome track record with helping classical singers and public speakers and Broadway singers get their voices back. And it was very interesting. It really piqued my curiosity. And what really felt quite fateful was that he was going to be in New Orleans, where I lived, teaching a workshop that I could not possibly afford as a college student. Now, my parents could have afforded it, but they already weren't super excited about me pursuing a career in voice, and there was no way they were going to pay for this. So I wrote him up a letter. I wrote this guy, I'll call him Breathing Sensei. We would jokingly call him that anyway, and so he knows who he is. And I sent him an email basically giving him my story, like, hey, I told him everything about how I love to sing and how I sucked at it and how I had gotten this classical training, but it had let me down, and how I was starting to starting to lose heart, because I was like, how can I have a career with it? I know there's more voice inside of me that I can't get out. To my surprise, he did not invite me to go to the workshop, but he did invite me to his hotel room in the French Quarter for a meeting. And I'm aware now, in retrospect, that probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, because I didn't know this guy that well at all. Who knows what could have happened? But luckily for me, he really did just want to talk about breathing. I walked into the hotel room, and Breathing Sensei takes one look at me, and he's like, well, of course you can't sing. He had never heard me sing a note at this point. He's like, of course you can't. He's like, you can't sing because you're apologizing for yourself. And I was like, what? What he made me aware of was that I was hunched over like this. I was kind of doing a Mr. Burns kind of thing. I was folded in, head up. I didn't think of it like that. Compared to how I stand now and how I move now, is probably very extremely different, but I was kind of used to being kind of collapsed over. Part of this is because, and this is tip number one, my classical training had really overemphasized belly breathing, abdominal breathing. And as you probably know if you're watching this, yes, your abdominal wall needs to release when you breathe. But there's a big difference between it releasing, being allowed to release, versus pushing it out as far as you can with no regard for anything else. And that's what I was doing. I was taught to fill my belly up, quote unquote, with air, and then to try to push it all out. What he had me do, he taught me that your chest is not evil. So he had me aware that I could let my chest open up. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could take a satisfying breath. A lot of classical instructors make you fear your chest. And what they don't want you to do is this: a tight, constricted, like folding in breath. We don't want to fold. We don't want to fold. But there's a big difference between a high, tight breath versus what I call a panoramic chest, which would be where the chest can open up, you know? So he helped me to open, and immediately I had so much more breath and so much more voice, and it just feels good now, actually. So that was the first thing. The other thing was, he really emphasized that even though the diaphragm's, relatively high in the body, feeling like you're breathing throughout 360 degrees. So he really emphasized that. And he made me aware that my back muscles were super tight and my back muscles were not expanding with the breath. Now, like many of you from my breathing video on YouTube, it frustrated me. I could not do it. I wanted him to give me the secret. I wanted him to tell me, to advise me how to release it instantaneously. And what he shared with me was shut up and just keep doing it repetitiously until your body releases. So breathing sensei was the first person to make me think of the breath or breath work as akin to fitness, that I thought of breathing as something you knew how to do or not. He taught breathing as an element of fitness. It was a conditioned response. It was a conditioning based thing. So by doing daily breath work and certain breathing exercises, I could release it. Just something as simple as repeatedly trying to breathe into my back and expand it. And of course, relaxing when I needed to. He would place his fist into like the kidney-ish zone, like the love handle-ish part of the back, kind of, you know, if that makes sense to you. And he would have me breathe him off of me. He would press his fist and I would breathe in, not his full body weight, but he would make me inhale so that he would kind of come flying off, if that makes sense. So he would like press in. I know it's not my back, but just to show you, he would have me press in and then you get it, but with my back. So, which would be weird to do right now. But anyway, as my back began to release and open up, it was like, like crap, like, no. Like I suddenly had all of this, I could blend, but with more openness. It wasn't forceful or belty, but it was just more resonant. So it just wasn't so tight, because sometimes when I do my demonstrations, I feel like I haven't been clear, but I could blend, but it was always very pinched, like very pinched. And after working with him, opening up my chest and my back, I was able to get much more openness, you know? So it just really added, more space. The more space I got to my body, the more space I got to my voice. And tip number 3 that he gave me. Now this part was scandalous. Don't take a breath. What? Yeah, when I would sing, because I was trying to do everything right and follow the rules, I would always try to fill my belly up. And even after he taught me that it was okay to release my chest and my back, I would still try to fill up. He never said fill up. I just interpreted it that way. He actually said allow breath to go. He would say allow. I heard force. That's what I heard. If you watch Iyanla Van Zant, what I heard, beloved, I heard force. That's what I heard. No, anyway, if you never watched that show, then that would mean nothing to you. But the point is, even though he didn't advise me to do that, that's what I was conditioned and trained to do. But when he caught me doing it, he was like, stop that. He was like, let yourself breathe. Allow the breath to come in. He was like, when you're casually speaking, you don't think, and then like, no, you just let the breath come in. And it was life-changing vocally. I had never heard such a thing. Because his whole spiel was, if you're in good breathing shape, if you treat breathing like fitness, because your respiratory muscles are real muscles, the diaphragm and the transverse abdominis and the intercostals and all the muscles that affect your breathing, there are more, but the point is, if you get them strong and well trained, then when it comes time for you to breathe, you just allow breath to come in. And it becomes a lot easier. And then, send your anointing, Father, I pray. I don't have to fight for that. I can get a little louder with a little more meat, but I don't have to. It's not a push. I'm open and everything can flow. You get it? Okay, I forgot to mention that I met with Breathing Sensei during my holiday break. So, when you're in college, it's like a month. So, I worked with him for maybe, 4 days straight. He had other stuff to do. He was more than giving up his time. He does not teach anymore, if you're wondering why I'm not really saying who he is and stuff. But the point is, he really helped me out a lot. And over the next few weeks, he let me call him all the time. He gave me books. He gave me workout regimens, like breath work regimens. And it really transformed my voice. So by the time I got back to class, I had a brand new voice and everyone noticed. Like everyone. And to the point where people were like, what the hell happened to you? And I was like, just practicing, just working hard. And the reason why I hit it, just to be clear, I didn't want to be a vocal coach. I didn't want to help anyone. these are people who had laughed at me. Even though some of them had become my friends, I still had a bit of a Kanye West like chip on my shoulder. And I was like, I'll be damned if I help any of you jerks who made this experience so hard for me starting out. And you guys laughed at me. You guys told me to quit. No, I'm not helping you. I'm going to lie about how my voice changed so dramatically. And so I did. And so everybody just thought, oh, I guess it clicked for Eric. He just started practicing. Even my own voice teacher, Mr. Brooks, he was like, oh, I can see you're really getting it. And I was like, totally. Your teaching is the bomb. You got me. Thank you. You're so great. So I kept it a secret. I kept my training with Breathing Sensei a secret. But I definitely had an edge. I'm not going to say it instantly made me the best, but it definitely propelled me to like the upper levels of students. As a junior in college, I was already granted acceptance into grad school. We had 2 teachers come for master classes. They both wanted me. Not me and someone else, but just me. I was voted the president of the concert choir. I was made section leader of the university chorus for the bass baritone section. Not bass dash baritone, but basses and baritones. You know what I mean? Like the whole lower voice male section. So, and I was offered an even bigger vocal scholarship than the full tuition scholarship I had been offered. So I was offered full tuition plus a stipend from my voice. So that's how dramatically my voice shifted. And I ended up graduating first. Before I came in with like, I don't know, a class of 30, I graduated first and by myself. So I graduated early. All this stuff because I had my mixed voice training, I had my classical training, and I had my breathwork training, and had really started to I wasn't masterful, but I kind of gotten the hang of kind of stringing them all together. And so, very simply, a lot of my peers were still forcing every inhale, whereas I was just allowing. And because I was allowing the breath to go throughout my whole body, quote unquote, I know you just have your lungs, but you know what I mean. Because I was letting my body, my whole body open up, I had more breath more easily, and it lasted longer. And because of my training with the mixed voice techniques, I knew how to blend my voice in a way that a lot of my peers did not, in a way that's typically not taught classically. And I still was learning things from Dr. Brooks in terms of resonance and in terms of letting my voice ring. And so my technique became pretty consistent. And so much so to where in one university choir class, we had a new student show up, and we were all reading from sheet music, and fecit potentiam, it's been a while, something like that. And we're singing this song. This guy, comes from the side of me, and Dr. Breed is like, Eric, share your music with him. Sure, whatever. And we're reading music together. And and we're singing, in brachio suo despair. And we're singing this, this Latin. It's in Latin. I think it's a Catholic thing. Whatever. We're singing this song. It's been years. We're singing this song, and this guy looks at me and says, what the I'm gonna bleep this out. For real. But he and I was like, oh, what? Was I all out of tune or whatever? And he said, you are really singing. You are really effing singing. And then it took me a moment, but the guy who was sitting next to me is one of the people who saw me get laughed out of the choir auditions in high school. And this guy was now a very well-respected musical director for people like Layla Hathaway and Babyface and stuff like that, and Lettucey. And he had come back to school because he wanted to write music for movies, and he had come back to school just to finish his degree, but he was an accomplished musician. And he remembered me from back in the day, and he heard me now. Or, not now, but he heard the difference. And he's like, whoa, you sound you can sing. And I was like, yeah, just training. He's like, no. Like, you sound so different. How did you do that? I was like, just practicing, and Mr. Brooks is amazing. Dr. Brooks is awesome. You're going to work with him. And he would not let it go. He didn't fall for it. Because if you could, I wish I would have had the nerve to record myself back then so you could hear how great the gap was. If I could play that, I probably would have every client in the world, because it was just such a dramatic shift. So I'm trying to kind of shoo him away because, again, these are like my secret techniques, and I didn't want anyone to know, that I'd secretly been training in 3 times gravity kind of thing. Yeah, nerdy reference. If you get it, you get it. Anyway, as we're walking out, he's like, "No, Eric, for real, teach me." And I was like, "I'm not a vocal coach, man. I don't want to teach you." And he's like, "No, teach me what you know." He's like, "Teach me," and that was the start of kind of leading me to where I am now. But I'm gonna end it there for today and continue from that point, because it was just the beginning of a whole new world of vocal delight, whatever. But this guy not letting me walk out of that classroom really kind of changed the course of my life forever. And I never saw it coming. And life would never be the same again. So that's that. You can follow me. That's that for this episode. You can follow me on social media, Eric Arsenault on everything, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. If you just want vocal stuff and you don't want personal stuff, like I said, if you don't want to see my selfies and crap, just go to A Approach. A Approach is just all vocal stuff on Instagram. And that's kind of it. So until next time, peace.